Life and death are never far apart. Every living thing is fleeing an inescapable end. A moment of fortune might extend existence. But in the end, nature always reclaims its own. Across the vast plains, 1.5 million wildebeest are beginning one of the greatest journeys on our planet. They move in a perpetual loop, driven by an instinct to find the rains and precious green grass. But the greatest challenge lies ahead, the formidable Mara River, a natural barrier of peril and drama. At the river's edge, thousands gather, the tension mounting as they face steep cliffs and swirling currents. Beneath the murky surface, immense shadows glide silently, without creating the slightest ripple. Nile crocodiles are the river's merciless gatekeepers, creatures that have changed little since the age of dinosaurs. With the most powerful jaws in the natural world, they wait patiently for the moment the chaos begins. A single wildebeest suddenly plunges, and instantly the entire herd pours forth like a living waterfall. The clatter of hooves on rock and cries of distress echo across the valley, creating an atmosphere thick with fear and resolve. In the turmoil, the crocodiles strike with terrifying precision, dragging unfortunate victims into the dark depths. The swift current carries not only silt, but also the young lives separated from the protection of the herd. This struggle between predator and prey is devoid of malice. It is merely the unforgiving mechanics of survival. Many wildebeest, exhausted by the current and the steep banks, become easy targets for waiting predators. Though the losses are immense, for the majority of the wildebeest, the far bank is the promised land to continue their lineage. At last, the Mara River grows still again, concealing the sated predators beneath its mirror-like surface. The migration presses onward, carrying the spirit of the great wilderness deep into the heart of the African continent. Away from the river's chaos, we move into the heart of the grasslands, where a figure lies perfectly still. A lioness, the grassland's apex predator, watches her target with incredible focus. For her, the hunt begins not with a breathless chase, but with absolute patience. She presses her body low against the sun-scorched earth, her tawny coat blending perfectly with the dry grass, rendering her almost invisible. Every slight movement is calculated. She advances only when the wind is in her favor, completely masking her scent. The distant wildebeest graze peacefully, entirely unaware that death stalks them from only a few yards away. In the world of lions, pride coordination is key, but today the burden of the hunt rests on her shoulders alone. It is an essential task, for deep in the thicket, her small cubs are waiting for the nourishment they need to grow. Suddenly, all quiet preparation ends in a powerful burst of speed, her body becoming a living arrow launched towards its target. This is a game of numbers and odds, where the smallest miscalculation can lead to a futile effort. In the sweltering heat of the day, every joule of expended energy is a high-stakes gamble for the hunter. Despite being a dominant predator, a lion's success rate is often just 1 in 5 attempts, a testament to the difficulty of life here. Silence once again falls over the plains as the chase concludes, leaving behind harsh lessons of perseverance and hope. As shadows lengthen beneath the acacia trees, a phantom of the grasslands begins to emerge. The leopard is the most solitary of the great cats, a creature that spends most of its life hidden in the crevices of the natural world. Unlike the communal lions, the leopard relies solely on itself and its own cunning to survive. It possesses an extraordinary muscular power, allowing for feats of balance and endurance. A fully grown leopard can hoist prey heavier than its own body weight high off the ground. On these sturdy branches, it creates a safe larder beyond the reach of hyena clans or lions. This strategy is essential for conserving precious energy in an environment where competition is ever present. From this vantage point, the leopard can survey its territory with a calm authority. Its keen eyes can pierce the darkness, detecting the slightest changes in the world around it. Its stillness is not passivity, but a perfect preparation for a life that allows no room for error. The search for water brings us to the most ancient travelers of the savannah. A family of African elephants, led by an experienced matriarch, is crossing the arid land. The herd's survival depends on her memory, a mental map of hidden water sources passed down through generations. These giants can sense water from many miles away thanks to trunks with an exceptionally keen sense of smell. Upon reaching a shrinking waterhole, they find it already occupied by a creature of a very different temperament. Hippopotamus. Spending their days submerged to protect sensitive skin from the sun, hippos are fiercely aggressive when defending their aquatic territory. Weighing up to 3 tons, they are among the most dangerous and unpredictable animals on the continent. As the elephants approach to drink, a tense standoff begins between the masters of the land and the kings of the water. The matriarch stands her ground, ears fanned wide, a display of absolute confidence and power born of immense size. Despite their aggressive reputation, the hippos eventually concede, backing away from the elephant's overwhelming presence. There is an unspoken hierarchy here, a mutual respect between giants that maintains a fragile peace at the water's edge. For the young calves, this water is not just for thirst, but a place to play and cool their dusty bodies in the intense heat. But even here, every drop is precious as the sun continues to bake the land, testing the very limits of endurance. This intimate relationship with water is the very pulse that dictates survival in this unforgiving wilderness. There is a city burning beneath the ocean, the oldest, most sprawling metropolis this planet has ever known. Not with fire, not with smoke, but what is spreading across the oldest walls on Earth, silently, invisibly, degree by degree, is more ruthless than any flame ever could be. From high above, the Caribbean Coral Reef resembles a living mosaic, drenched in impossible color, deep purple, burnt orange, luminous turquoise, stretching for hundreds of miles along the sun-drenched coasts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. But look closer, and amid that riot of color, pale white patches are spreading, white as bone, white as death. This is the story of the oldest living city on Earth, a place where 9% of the world's coral reefs reside, where 1/4 of all known marine species call home from translucent fish smaller than a fingernail to ocean giants weighing several tons. A city whose architects have no eyes, no brain, no legs, yet have built the ocean's greatest structure for tens of thousands of years. And that city brick, by calcium carbonate brick, is collapsing. Welcome to WildVerse, where we explore the most extraordinary stories the natural world has to offer. The Mesoamerican Reef, the longest barrier reef system in the entire Western Hemisphere and the second largest on Earth, surpassed only by Australia's Great Barrier Reef, stretches 620 miles across 4 sovereign nations, a living fortress of limestone and biology that shields vulnerable coastlines and sustains millions of lives. Over 500 fish species converge in these waters. Their very survival hinges upon the vitality of the reef, a magnificent architecture forged by more than 65 species of hard coral during at least one crucial stage of their lives. The Belize Barrier Reef alone, a revered UNESCO World Heritage Site, yields over $6 billion in annual revenue, driven by tourism, fisheries, and pioneering pharmaceuticals. More than 60 million tourists descend on the Caribbean each year, drawn by the promise of turquoise water and white sand. Many come for the sea, but few realize that the very sea they love, the sea they photograph, swim in, and build memories around, is dying beneath their feet. Behind these staggering numbers lies a question that haunts marine biologists, but that no one else dares ask aloud. A city, 10,000 years old. Who built it? Who keeps it breathing? And who is strangling it? The answer begins with the smallest, most unassuming creatures of all organisms, so tiny they vanish from sight. When night falls over the Caribbean, and the last traces of sunlight dissolve into the deep blue, the city awakens. Billions of coral polyps, each one smaller than the tip of a little finger. Each one a soft-bodied animal, no more complex than a jellyfish, extend their delicate tentacles from limestone skeletons, resuming the construction work that has continued without pause for thousands of years. They have no brain, no eyes, no muscle or bone. Yet each night, every polyp quietly extracts calcium from seawater, casting it into calcium carbonate, the bricks of the city. Slowly, patiently, without end. A single polyp amounts to almost nothing, a speck of living tissue smaller than a grain of rice. But billions of polyps building together in concert across thousands upon thousands of years have created the largest structure ever raised by living organisms on this planet. The secret behind this monumental feat of construction lies in the oldest symbiotic partnership in the ocean, a pact forged in the ancient seas. Within the tissue of each polyp, millions of zooxanthellae algae reside microscopic photosynthesis engines, supplying up to 90% of the energy coral needs to survive. In return, the coral provides shelter and CO2 for photosynthesis, a mutual agreement that has endured for millions of years. But that agreement carries a fatal clause. It only functions within an extraordinarily narrow temperature range. Brain coral forms the foundation's solid, boulder-like masses that anchor the city's structure against the relentless push and pull of ocean currents. Above them, staghorn coral grows in branching forests of intricate complexity, raising a three-dimensional labyrinth that provides shelter, hunting ground, and nursery for thousands of species. Yet the coral city is more than a home for fish. A healthy reef reduces up to 97% of wave energy before it reaches shore, a natural seawall protecting 44 million Caribbean residents. Coral also provides compounds for medicine, food for fisheries, and absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere, a city that serves both ocean and land. And each year, the city stakes everything on a single night, one singular event, to secure its future across the ages. Synchronized with moonlight precisely a few nights after the full moon, billions of polyps across the entire reef simultaneously release eggs and sperm into the water, creating an inverted pink and gold snowstorm beneath the sea. The triggering mechanism remains a question science has yet to fully decode. Millions of gametes drift toward the surface, finding each other in darkness. This is coral's greatest gamble and the most critical night in the life of the entire city. The larvae that survive will drift, settle on hard surfaces, and begin to build the first brick of a new tower. But a city needs more than architects to survive. It needs workers who keep the streets clean, a dedicated sanitation crew. And in the Caribbean, the sanitation crew wears the most flamboyant uniform on the block. Parrotfish, their individual teeth fused into a formidable beak as hard as stone, reinforced with a crystalline structure that rivals industrial ceramics, spend entire days gnawing methodically at the reef surface, stripping away fast-growing algae before it can smother and suffocate living coral. The sound carries across the reef, crunching, grinding, chewing without pause. An ear held beneath the surface reveals the unmistakable soundtrack of a city being cleaned. Without parrotfish, algae would blanket the entire reef within months. Data shows macroalgae coverage has increased 85% in areas where herbivorous fish have disappeared, coral suffocating inside the very city it built. The work of parrotfish, however, does not end there. The most remarkable thing they do happens at the other end. Each large parrotfish excretes roughly 200 pounds of white sand per year, dead coral passing through its digestive system, emerging as powder-fine grains. Those white sand beaches on Caribbean postcards, the ones millions of tourists dream about, are parrotfish excrement. Thousands of years of gnawing, grinding, excreting. The result is paradise. When night falls, parrotfish find a crevice in the rock and begin secreting a transparent mucus cocoon that envelops their entire body, masking their scent from nocturnal hunters. A biological sleeping bag, custom-built, single-use, chemically sealed, undetectable in the dark, and impervious to predators. The next morning, the cocoon dissolves into the current, as though it never existed, and the sanitation crew resumes another tireless shift on the reef. The city, however, needs more than sanitation workers. It needs security and doctors. In the darkest crevices of the reef, a creature waits its mouth opening and closing ceaselessly, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth curved backward. The green moray eel, the queen of ambush in the coral city. That perpetually gaping mouth looks terrifying, but in truth, it is simply how the animal breathes pumping water across its gills to extract oxygen. Do not be deceived by this seemingly passive display. The reality lurking behind that gaping mouth is far more frightening than any outward appearance suggests. The moray eel possesses something no other fish on the planet has, a second set of jaws, pharyngeal jaws concealed deep within the throat, capable of launching forward with explosive force to seize prey and drag it down into the esophagus. In 2007, researchers at UC Davis first documented this mechanism and compared it to the xenomorph creature from the film Alien, except for one detail. This is real. Prey gets no second chance. The outer jaws clamp down with vice-like force. The inner jaws shoot forward and pull inward, in a fraction of a second swallowed whole. But even the queen of ambush, feared by every creature on the reef, requires medical attention from time to time. And the Coral City operates its own healthcare system cleaning stations. At fixed points across the reef, cleaner shrimp and small fish open clinics where larger fish queue to have parasites, dead tissue, and bacteria removed. A wordless contract. The large fish opens its mouth, flares its gills, and a tiny creature steps into the jaws of an animal that could swallow it at any moment. Absolute trust, a primal, unspoken covenant between doctor and patient, honored across species lines for millennia. Some fish travel hundreds of yards, crossing the territories of rivals, braving lurking danger just to reach their preferred cleaning station. Like a loyal patient, committed to a trusted physician, willing to drive far and wait long as it is the right one. Fish change color when they arrive at a station darker, slower, a universal signal within the Coral City that says, "I am here to be healed, not to hunt." Even the green moray, the most ferocious ambush predator in the neighborhood, lies still, opens its mouth, and allows cleaner shrimp to walk between rows of blade-like teeth. Without cleaning stations, disease would sweep across the reef. Parasites would multiply. Fish would weaken. The city would decay from within. What looks like mercy is not mercy at all. It is a medical contract both parties need each other to survive. In the Coral City, no one lives alone. Every creature is a link in the chain. When one link breaks, the entire system trembles, and the consequences ripple outward in ways no one can fully predict. Still, the city demands more than doctors and laborers. It needs an army. And here, the army wears a form so unexpected, so improbable, that it defies every assumption about what a soldier should be. As the last traces of Caribbean light fade from the water column, a shape slowly detaches from the reef surface, materializing from a spot where, just 1 second earlier, there appeared to be nothing but rock and algae. The Caribbean Reef octopus, the city's most consummate spy. Beneath its impossibly soft skin, millions of chromatophores, microscopic pigment sacs controlled by individual muscle fibers, stand primed and ready. In less than 3/10 of a second, they can alter not only color, but the entire texture and topography of the skin's surface. from rough red coral to smooth white sand, from green seaweed to cracked grey stone, perfect down to the finest detail. The most astonishing fact: scientists believe the octopus may be colorblind, unable to perceive color the way humans do. Yet the replicas it produces are staggeringly accurate. Its brain, or more precisely, 8 smaller brains, distributed across 8 arms, plus one central brain, processes information from skin and environment without requiring confirmation from the eyes. Night is when the spy deploys. The Caribbean reef octopus employs a technique called web hunting, spreading all 8 arms wide like an umbrella, blanketing the seabed, then tightening the net. Any crab, shrimp, or small fish trapped beneath that living canopy is captured whole with no possibility of escape. But sometimes, the octopus does not need to see its prey. It uses speculative hunting, identifying promising crevices and probing them with an exploratory arm. The intelligence at work here is not mere instinct. They learn from experience, memorize the locations of enemies, and can even learn from peers despite almost never encountering one another. Experiments show octopuses can open jars, solve mazes, and recall solutions weeks later long-term memory in a creature that lives just 18 months. The Caribbean reef octopus is solitary to the bone, territorial, aggressive, ready to cannibalize any intruder. They meet for one reason only: mating. The encounter is brief, tense, and fraught with danger. And immediately after, they part ways, or one becomes the other's meal. When threatened, the spy activates a 2-layered defense system. First, a dense cloud of black ink, obscuring not just vision but scent, erasing every trace for the pursuer. Next, jet propulsion. The octopus draws water into its mantle cavity and blasts it in reverse rocketing away, vanishing in an instant. Within the coral metropolis, the octopus is a lone operative. No allies, no coalitions, only pure intelligence and 8 arms that can taste, touch, and think simultaneously. But every city needs a mayor. And in the Caribbean, the mayor weighs 800 pounds. The Goliath grouper, the largest bony fish on the Caribbean reef, reaches up to 8 feet in length, with a mouth wide enough to swallow a whole lobster in a single gulp. No swift, agile predator built for pursuit. Rather, a creature that rules its domain through sheer, overwhelming size and an ability no other reef fish possesses: the power of sound. The Goliath grouper wields its specialized swim bladder like a war drum, producing a deep, resonant, thunderous boom that reverberates through the water column, audible for dozens of yards in every direction. That sound is so low that humans can barely detect it above the surface. But on the sea floor, every creature knows the mare is speaking. The boom serves two functions: repelling territorial intruders and communicating with kin during spawning season. Its hunting method is brutal in its simplicity, opening its mouth to generate enormous negative pressure, inhaling prey whole before the victim realizes what is happening. No chase, no struggle, no dramatic confrontation, just one catastrophic suction, and the prey vanishes as if it never existed. Each year, dozens of Goliath groupers gather at fixed sites to spawn a spawning aggregation, a ritual repeated for thousands of years at the same locations. They return as though carrying a map, etched in memory the same reef ledge, the same current, the same lunar cycle, a tradition older than every human civilization. But that very habit, that deep-rooted fidelity to specific spawning grounds, nearly proved their undoing and almost destroyed the species entirely. Overfishing pushed the Goliath grouper to the brink. IUCN classified it as critically endangered for decades. In 1990, the United States imposed a complete fishing ban. "30 years later, populations began to recover slowly but steadily. IUCN downgraded the status to vulnerable. Giant groupers reappeared at reef ledges where they had been absent for decades. The mare returned. Living proof, tangible, measurable, undeniable, that nature can recover from the brink if only given the chance. Goliath groupers can live up to 37 years. They mature slowly. Every individual lost leaves, a gap that takes decades to fill. Beyond the city's outermost edge, where the reef drops away into the blue void, the patrol begins its shift. The Caribbean reef shark, not the bloodthirsty killer Hollywood portrays, but the reef's most loyal police force. Research shows they remain faithful to specific territories for years, patrolling the same beat, day after day. What surprises scientists is not the patrol behavior, it is the social life. Caribbean reef sharks form individual bonds. They have friends and prefer to swim alongside specific companions, a society far more complex than the image of the solitary predator. And no sharks do not hunt humans. Throughout recorded history in the Caribbean, attacks can be counted on one hand. Humans are not on their menu, never have been. Sharks fear humans more than humans fear them. The presence of reef sharks is an indicator of reef health, like the city's pulse. A reef without sharks is a reef in distress. The food chain spirals out of control. Mid-level species explode. Coral bears the pressure. And the city, this timeless, irreplaceable metropolis, is steadily losing its patrol force. Over the past 50 years, more than 90% of large shark populations have vanished from the ocean, victims of finning and bycatch. Lose the police, and order collapses. And on the coral reef, order means life. If you find the world beneath the ocean as fascinating as we do, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have not yet subscribed to WildVerse, now is the perfect time. Above the reef, a silhouette glides past like a fighter jet. The spotted eagle ray, with a wingspan reaching 10 feet from tip to tip, a total length including its whip-like tail of 16 feet, and a weight exceeding 500 pounds, does not merely swim through the water, it flies. Its broad wings beat gently, propelling the body through water with a grace no other fish can match, a dancer of the open water. Across its back, hundreds of white spots form a pattern unique to each individual, like a fingerprint, no two alike. Researchers use these markings to identify and track individuals across years. That outward elegance conceals a refined and remarkably efficient hunting apparatus beneath the surface. A shovel-shaped snout allows the eagle ray to excavate sand-flipping layers of sediment to expose hidden prey: clams, snails, sea urchins, crabs. Electrosensory pores in the snout detect the faint heartbeat of prey buried beneath thick sand, even when the naked eye sees nothing. A long tail armed with venomous spines, the last line of defense when an enemy draws too close. The eagle ray moves between coral reef and flat sandy bottom, connecting two worlds, keeping populations of sea urchins and mollusks from spiraling out of control. Yet the most spectacular moment does not happen underwater. Occasionally, the spotted eagle ray launches its entire body clear of the sea, soaring through open air for a heartbeat, then crashing back with a thunderclap of spray. To shed parasites, to evade a predator, or simply because it can. the city's resident pilot, graceful and effortless above the reef, ruthless and methodical in the sediment below. At the reef's edge, where clear water meets the murky flow of estuaries, a creature from prehistory still patrols. The Atlantic tarpon, known reverently to anglers as the Silver King, stands as one of the most ancient fish species still swimming the world's oceans, with a lineage stretching back tens of millions of years to an era when dinosaurs still walked the earth. Massive silver scales gleam beneath sunlight, up to 8 feet long. Weighing more than 300 pounds, the tarpon cuts across the surface like a silver sword. But the most remarkable feature of this primordial survivor is not external, not the silver armor, not the imposing size. It lies within. The tarpon's swim bladder does not merely regulate buoyancy. It functions as a primitive lung, lined with a richly vascularized capillary membrane that absorbs oxygen directly from air, an evolutionary trait inherited from Devonian-era fish when life first ventured onto land. A fish that breathes air-gulping atmosphere at the surface, like a creature caught between two evolutionary worlds, just as its ancestors did hundreds of millions of years ago when fish first crawled ashore. A living fossil, a survival engine forged in the Devonian seas that has outlasted 5 mass extinctions, each one reshaping the planet beyond recognition. Slow to mature, 6 to 13 years to reach sexual maturity, the tarpon lives on its own rhythm, migrating with water temperatures between 74 and 88 degrees Fahrenheit. When the warm season arrives, they move along coastlines in vast schools, silver scales shimmering beneath the surface like a river of mercury flowing parallel to the shore. Offshore, they gather in massive aggregations to spawn, then disperse, returning to familiar warm waters. That age-old migratory path has repeated for millions of years without interruption, since long before humans existed, since long before this very reef was born. In the seagrass meadows surrounding the reef, a creature moves at a glacial pace so slowly that algae grows on its back. The green sea turtle, the only large herbivore in the Caribbean that feeds exclusively on seagrass, performs essential ecological work that no one ever sees, methodically trimming the meadows, keeping the grass short and healthy, and promoting vigorous new growth. Without turtles maintaining this natural lawn, seagrass would grow tall, block the sunlight from reaching its own roots, and die from the bottom up. Healthy seagrass meadows serve as nurseries for hundreds of fish species where larvae find their first meals before migrating to the reef. These meadows also function as vast carbon sinks, locking CO2 in sediment for thousands of years. Green sea turtles navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, returning to the exact beach where they were born decades earlier to lay their eggs. "20, 30 years pass. Coastlines change. Cities rise. Yet the turtle finds the precise spot with pinpoint accuracy, a biological compass of staggering precision. The The survival rate, however, is brutal. Only 1 in 1,000 hatchlings lives to adulthood. The rest become food for birds, fish, crabs, fuel for the food chain. "1,000 eggs, 1 survivor. But that single survivor is enough to keep the circle unbroken. Not far away, an enormous silhouette drifts through the seagrass, larger than the turtle, slower than the turtle, and gentler than any creature in the city. The West Indian manatee. Its closest living relative on land is not the seal or the otter, but the elephant. Both belong to the superorder Afrotheria, an ancient evolutionary lineage rooted in Africa. IUCN status: endangered. Its metabolism is so slow that it must feed 8 hours a day simply to maintain body temperature. They communicate through soft squeaks and clicks, a quiet language beneath the water that human ears can barely detect. Across their backs, long scars, the marks of boat propellers. Nearly every adult manatee bears scars. Some carry dozens. Too slow to dodge the propellers that bear down on them, too gentle to fear the boats that share their waters, and far too ecologically important to lose. Turtles trim seagrass. Manatees keep meadows productive. Coral reefs shield the meadows from heavy waves. The meadows nurture larvae for the reef. Mangroves filter the water for both. Coral reefs, seagrass beds, mangroves. The Caribbean triangle of life. Destroy one, and all three fall. The Coral City holds more than laborers and sentries. It holds intellectuals. The bottlenose dolphin, possessing a brain that is proportionally larger and structurally more complex than a human's relative to body size, with a neocortex folded into elaborate convolutions, lives within the most sophisticated and socially intricate communities in the ocean. Each individual possesses a signature whistle, a unique, unrepeatable call, a name, an identity, a self. They employ echolocation, emitting ultrasonic clicks, and reading the returning echoes to see not only shape, but density and internal composition. A dolphin can distinguish a hollow ball from a solid one by sound alone. They see through sand, through flesh, through every hiding place prey attempts. A living ultrasound machine. And altruistic behavior. Dolphins shield other species from sharks, support injured members to the surface to breathe, not blind instinct, but choice. It is not only humans who know compassion, who choose to help another at cost to themselves. The ocean learned it long before humanity ever did. But the Caribbean's greatest and most magnificent residents do not live here year-round. They are seasonal visitors, travelers from the far reaches of the Atlantic. Each winter, humpback whales undertake a monumental odyssey, migrating thousands of miles from the nutrient-rich feeding grounds of the North Atlantic to the warm, sheltered waters of the Caribbean to breed and give birth one of the longest annual migrations of any mammal on Earth. "40 tons of body fasting for months, surviving on blubber reserves inches thick, all to find water warm enough and calm enough for a calf to be born." Mothers give birth in the shallow Caribbean waters, and in the first weeks they teach their young to breathe, nudging the calf to the surface, waiting for it to draw its first gulp of air, then guiding it back down, patiently, repeatedly. And in those warm waters, the males begin to sing, the most complex song in the animal kingdom, with themes, phrases, and structure evolving each year, spreading between populations like oral tradition. All males in the same region sing the same song, but the song changes every season. New melodies appear, old phrases vanish. No one knows why. No one knows who composes first. "40 tons launching clear of the water breaching, then crashing back in an explosion that resonates for miles. Communication, play, a territorial declaration, perhaps all three." The circle closes. Coral reefs nourish plankton, plankton nourish fish, fish nourish whales, and whales pump nutrients back to the reef. Break any link in that ancient chain, and the circle shatters, cascading failure through every connected system, and the circle is shattering. But hope remains fragile, hard-won, yet undeniably real. And that hope does not come from words or promises. It comes from action. Scientists are cultivating supercorals, heat-tolerant genetic strains, selectively bred and carefully conditioned to survive in water temperatures that would kill their wild counterparts. It is a race against time, and neither side yet holds a decisive advantage. "3D, printed artificial reef structures are being deployed synthetic skeletons for coral larvae to settle on, laying the groundwork for a new city." AI-powered acoustic monitoring systems listen to the ocean 24 hours a day, detecting early signs of stress, disease, and the return of keystone species. Caribbean fishermen are shifting from extraction to ecotourism, from harvesting to conservation. Because they understand, a dead reef means a dead livelihood. Sustainable tourism contributes more than 10% of Caribbean GDP. Every dollar from a living reef is worth many times more than one from a dead reef. And the Goliath grouper, the mare, once sentenced to extinction, has returned, living proof that 30 years of protection can reverse decades of devastation. Nature does not need us to rescue it with grand gestures or heroic interventions. Nature only needs us to stop. Stop polluting its waters. Stop extracting its wealth. Stop looking away while it crumbles. The oldest city on Earth is still breathing, slowly, faintly, but breathing, and every breath is a reminder that it is not yet too late. Somewhere on the reef, a new polyp has just attached itself to a rock surface. No eyes, no brain, but it begins to build. The first brick of a new tower in a city that has never stopped hoping. Thank you for joining WildVerse. The ocean still holds countless stories waiting to be told. We will see you on the next journey. Every dawn begins a new hunt. Hunter and prey share the same fear. One moment, too slow, and fate is sealed. Because in this world, survival is everything. Somewhere on the East African savannah, a young male lion stands motionless at the edge of the pride he was born into. He is 2 years old, and he is no longer welcome. His mother watches from the shade of an acacia tree. She does not call him back. She does not follow. A lioness knows what must happen, even when every instinct resists it. Within hours, he will walk into open grassland with nothing. No territory, no allies, no experience, and no guarantee of a next meal. "60% of young males exiled this way will not survive their first year alone. The savannah does not forgive inexperience." This is not cruelty. This is the oldest law of the pride, a law written not in stone, but in 40 million years of evolution. To understand why he must leave, we must first understand what he is leaving behind and why it works. A lion pride is not a random gathering of animals. It is a society ancient, structured, and governed by rules that would surprise anyone who believes the male is king. The truth is simpler and far more remarkable than any myth. The pride belongs to the females. It has always belonged to them. Daughters stay, sons leave. Mothers, sisters, aunts, and cousins form bonds that last a lifetime, hunting together, raising cubs together, defending territory side by side. The males may wear the crown, but the females built the kingdom, and they are the ones who keep it standing. On the open plains, a group of lionesses moves in formation. 2 on the flanks, 1 in the center. They have rehearsed this coordinated ambush across 1,000 generations. Their success rate hovers around 20 to 30%. 7 out of 10 hunts end in nothing. But failure does not discourage a lioness. It sharpens her. What most people never witness is what happens after the hunt. The pride reunites. Heads press together. Flanks brush against flanks. A low rumble passes between them. This is not mere affection. Each greeting releases oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds a human mother to her child. In a pride, touch is survival. Every lion carries a unique scent signature. When pride members rub faces, they blend their scents into a shared chemical profile, a passport that separates family from intruder. When cubs arrive, the pride transforms. Mothers nurse each other's young without hesitation, a communal nursery where no cub goes hungry while one mother still has milk. Synchronized breeding ensures that cubs are born together. 12 lives in a single week. Predators cannot take them all. Sheer numbers become the first defense. But the arithmetic is brutal. Only 4 out of every 10 cubs will reach their second birthday. Hyenas, starvation, disease, and rival males all collect their toll. And here lies the paradox that disturbs every observer. When a new coalition of males conquers a pride, they kill the existing cubs, every single one. It is not rage. It is not madness. It is evolution's coldest equation. A female who loses her cubs becomes receptive within weeks. The new male's genes advance. The old ones vanish. The resident males, the ones the world calls lazy, are anything but idle. GPS tracking reveals a pride. Male patrols 20 kilometers every night, marking borders and confronting hyenas in the dark. His roar carries 8 kilometers through the darkness, 114 decibels, louder than a rock concert. It is not a threat, it is a declaration. I am here. This ground is mine. But no reign lasts forever. 2 years, perhaps 4. Then younger, stronger males arrive, and the old king walks into the tall grass, alone. This is where the exiled young male finds his purpose. After months of wandering and starving and scavenging scraps from other predators, he finds a brother, and everything changes. A coalition of 2 or 3 males is exponentially more powerful than one. Together, they hunt larger prey. Together, they challenge established kings. Together, they can conquer a pride. Brotherhood is not sentiment on the savannah. It is mathematics. A lone male has almost no chance of holding territory. A coalition of 3 can hold it for years. And so the wheel turns. Exile becomes alliance. Alliance becomes conquest. Conquest becomes reign. Reign becomes exile once more. What makes lions extraordinary is not their strength, nor their speed, nor the roar that shakes the night. It is their devotion to community. Cooperation, coordination, sacrifice. These are the forces that built the pride and kept it standing across millennia on the African plains. But Africa is not the only place on Earth where these ancient principles govern life and death. "5,000 miles to the north, where temperatures plunge to -40 and darkness consumes 20 hours of every winter day, another social predator lives by the same unbreakable rule: hunt together or starve alone. In a land called Yukon, 186,000 square miles of wilderness at the northwestern edge of Canada, the wolves are waiting. And on the frost-covered peaks above them, a great migration has already begun. Across the frost-laden peaks of the Ogilvy Mountains, an immense column of life moves slowly through the valley below. Tens of thousands of porcupine caribou press steadily southward through the fading amber light of an Arctic autumn. They do not stop. They have never stopped. For thousands of years, this march has continued without fail. This is Yukon, 186,000 square miles of unbroken wilderness at the far northwestern edge of Canada, a territory so vast and remote that population density falls below 1/10 of a person per square mile. Mount Logan rises 19,551 feet into the Arctic sky, the highest peak in all of Canada, where the clouds themselves are forced to bow beneath its frozen summit. The Ogilvy, Street Elias, and Mackenzie ranges stand shoulder to shoulder like ancient fortress walls, sheltering the land that the Gwich'in people have called the Great River since time beyond memory. Kluane National Park, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, safeguards one of the last truly pristine ecosystems remaining anywhere in North America. "348 bird species, more than 60 mammal species, and millions of acres of taiga forests stretch unbroken across the landscape to the distant horizon. Yet beneath this spectacular beauty lies a merciless law, one that governs every creature dwelling within its borders. Each season in Yukon rewrites the rules of survival from the ground up. Each season forces every living creature from the smallest lemming to the largest bear to make a single, irrevocable decision. Welcome to WildVerse, where we explore the most extraordinary stories the natural world has to offer. Stay or go. Migrate across 1,500 miles of frozen, windswept tundra, or dig in and endure a winter plunging to 40 below. The answer is not as simple as it seems, and the price of choosing wrong for any species in any season is everything. Autumn has begun to descend across Yukon, painting the taiga in fire and gold. The first movement in the great four-season cycle has sounded its opening note. On the vast tundra steppe, the caribou have already started walking. They know something that we, as observers, can only stand and witness from afar. Time waits for no creature in this land. Every hour of delay carries a price measured in survival. From the windswept coastal plains of the Beaufort Sea, more than 143,000 porcupine caribou begin the greatest overland migration anywhere in North America. 1,500 miles each year, a vast migratory circle that no other land mammal on this continent has ever matched in recorded history. They cross the formidable Ogilvy Range, heading toward the sheltered Porcupine River Valley, where vast expanses of taiga forest await the approaching winter. The coat of the porcupine caribou is an engineering marvel shaped by millennia of Arctic evolution. Two thick layers of fur stack upon one another. The inner layer traps body heat, while the outer repels wind, rain, and snow. As the seasons shift, their coat gradually transitions from deep brown in summer to pale gray in winter, a flawless camouflage meticulously tailored to every landscape they traverse. Both male and female porcupine caribou grow antlers, a biological trait entirely unique among all deer species anywhere on Earth. In the traditional knowledge of the Gwich'in, caribou herds do not move at random. A lead animal always breaks the trail. In autumn and spring, the experienced females lead the herd. When deep snow buries the tundra beyond recognition, the strongest males assume the vanguard position. Thousands of years of patient observation have taught the Gwich'in and Vuntut Gwich'in peoples what modern science is only now beginning to understand and document. On the migration route, caribou do far more than simply pass through the landscape they feed constantly. Foraging tactics shift with each change in terrain and altitude. In low productivity zones, short grasses offer quick nutrition. But upon reaching the southern forests, lichen becomes the target, even at the cost of competition with other species. And something remarkable happens in the very midst of this grueling migration. The mating season begins, while the herd is still pressing forward across the open tundra. Males compete with deep bellowing calls and thunderous clashing of antlers that echo across the valleys for miles. But the females do not simply choose the strongest contender. They select males with endurance, with superior pathfinding ability qualities forged through hardship that will pass down to the next generation of survivors. The rut ends as suddenly as it began, but the march does not falter for a moment. The herd presses south through wind-scoured mountain passes where gales cut like frozen blades. The hooves of hundreds of thousands of caribou carve trails deep into the tundra, altering vegetation in ways no other creature can achieve. When winter finally fades and snowmelt floods the tundra, fresh grasses will sprout along those very trails, a quiet act of renewal, orchestrated by hooves that never intended to plant a single seed. According to the 2025 survey, the porcupine herd numbers roughly 143,000, a significant decline from the peak of 218,000 in 2017. Though still within the green zone under the harvest management plan, the downward trend casts a heavy question over every migration season. But caribou do not concern themselves with statistics or population surveys. They know only one imperative: to walk, and the shortening days of autumn drive them faster. Ahead lies the Richardson Range, where the wind howls without ceasing across exposed ridgelines, and the first heavy snow of the season has already begun to fall. Each step across the frozen tundra carries them closer to the sheltered valleys where they will spend the winter and closer to the predators that are already waiting in the shadows. Caribou droppings, the most unassuming substance imaginable, contain remarkably high levels of nitrogen, quietly fertilizing the tundra along every migration corridor. That nitrogen seeps deep into the permafrost soil, stimulating plant recovery and helping the tundra regenerate faster after drought seasons or when spring snowmelt arrives late. A domino effect begins to cascade through the ecosystem. Healthier tundra produces healthier forests to the south, and a small, fiercely territorial resident is counting on exactly that. Red squirrels, creatures that never hibernate, survive on enormous food caches called middens. Nitrogen from caribou dung strengthens the forest, boosts spruce cone production, and delivers more provisions to the squirrels. Each red squirrel defends its territory with shrill, piercing calls and startling ferocity disproportionate to its tiny frame. They stockpile thousands of spruce cones for winter, the survival strategy of those who stay behind. But red squirrels are not the only ones who recognize the value of the migrating herd. Ravens, the most intelligent birds of the subarctic trail caribou for hundreds of miles. They do not follow the herd out of loyalty or kinship. They wait for carcasses, steal food from other scavengers, and remember the precise location of every feast for weeks on end. Ravens' fake alarm calls to trick other animals into abandoning food, and they fearlessly harass bald eagles in mid-flight despite the dramatic and dangerous difference in size. From caribou to dung, from dung to soil, from soil to forest, from forest to squirrels and ravens, an invisible chain of interdependence so intricate that only the patient hand of nature could have woven it. Porcupine caribou do not know they are ecosystem engineers of continental scale. But every migratory step they take reshapes the living world around them in ways both visible and unseen. Not every caribou chooses the longest road. The 40-mile herd, numbering roughly 84,000 migrates, far shorter distances, only a few hundred miles around the 40 Mile River region. Smaller than the porcupine caribou, nutritionally disadvantaged by their limited range, the 40 Mile herd exemplifies a different strategy. Travel not far, but travel smart. Smaller groups, closer to the taiga. When winter strikes, 40 Mile caribou shelter beneath the forest canopy, while the porcupine herd treks hundreds of miles in search of lichen. Two fundamentally different strategies. One shared objective: survive the Yukon winter. But the costs, the risks, and the rewards could not be more different. Historically, these two herds almost never meet, but rare events in the 1960s and in 1979 witnessed something unusual. Porcupine caribou strayed deep into 40 Mile territory. No conflict erupted. No competition for resources materialized. The two herds quietly avoided each other and continued along their separate ancestral paths. Nature in Yukon rarely wastes precious energy on unnecessary conflict between closely related populations. How long that precarious equilibrium endures, no one can say with certainty. But as autumn yields to the first bitter winds of winter, both herds sense the same unsettling truth. The real test has not yet begun. Temperatures begin their inexorable descent below zero. Streams freeze inward from their banks, the ice creeping toward the center of each current, slowly, like a breath fading to silence. Darkness lengthens with each passing day, swallowing more sunlight with every rotation of the Earth. At this latitude, winter does not simply arrive, it devours everything in its path. In the deep shadows of the taiga forest, amber eyes are watching every movement with predatory patience, and three formidable tundra hunters are preparing for a confrontation of their own. Winter in Yukon is not a test that rewards effort. It is a verdict final, absolute, and without appeal. By late October, winter locks its grip on Yukon. Temperatures plunge from 20 below to 40 below zero Fahrenheit, and darkness blankets nearly 20 hours of every day. The porcupine caribou reach the Richardson Range, where constant winds sweep the mountain slopes, preventing deep snow accumulation and exposing precious lichen patches beneath. This is no accident of geography. Thousands of generations of caribou have discovered through trial and loss that wind is their greatest ally, clearing away the snow to reveal the last remaining food. Caribou fur is engineered for extreme cold with astonishing precision. Each individual hair is hollow like a tiny tube, trapping a thick layer of insulating air within its structure. Their noses serve as a natural heating system, warming frigid air before it reaches the lungs, preventing the body from losing heat from within. Their broad, paddle-like hooves function as shovels, scraping through snow to reach lichen while maintaining balance on slick ice. A caribou's body can withstand 58 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, a threshold that would kill most mammals within hours. But the true challenge is not temperature, it is hunger, and the predators lurking in the perpetual darkness. 40 Mile caribou choose a markedly different approach to winter. They shelter beneath the heavy taiga canopy in smaller groups. moving as little as possible, conserving every calorie of energy while the porcupine herd toils through open snow. A third group receives far less attention, the boreal woodland caribou. They live alone or in small clusters within the flat forests and wetlands east of the Peel River. Weighing between 265 and 465 pounds, standing roughly 3 to 4 feet at the shoulder, woodland caribou are larger than tundra caribou, but far more sedentary. They embody the purest form of the stay strategy. No migration, no massive herds, only quiet persistence deep within the taiga where snowpack runs deepest. 3 types of caribou, 3 strategies, 1 question. Go far, go short, or stay put. Yukon's winter tests them all. 2 overwintering strategies. Face the blizzard head on, or vanish into the shelter of the forest. Neither is easier than the other. But caribou are not the only creatures undertaking a remarkable and perilous migration through the vast wilderness of Yukon. Chinook salmon, the ultimate migrant of the freshwater world, travel more than 2,000 miles from the open Pacific Ocean into the Yukon River to fulfill the single, consuming purpose of their existence: to spawn and to die. For nearly 3 months, they eat nothing at all. Their bodies disintegrate from within muscles, waste away. Skin darkens to crimson, jaws twist and deform, all to channel every last reserve into their eggs. And then they die, every single one. Each salmon carcass becomes a source of nitrogen and phosphorus, nourishing the forests and mountains along both riverbanks. A sacrifice more absolute than any other creature on this planet can offer. Chinook salmon live solely to die, and in dying they sustain an entire ecosystem that depends on their return. But Canadian-origin Chinook salmon populations have collapsed to critical levels. Return numbers have hit record lows, falling far below 1/3 of the minimum threshold needed to sustain the species. A 7-year fishing moratorium from 2024 to 2030 has been enacted between Canada and Alaska, targeting the recovery of 71,000 fish crossing the border. Will 7 years of enforced silence along these ancient waterways be enough to bring the river back to teeming life? The answer belongs to nature, to patience, and to time alone. While salmon sacrifice their bodies to feed the river and its forests, caribou out on the wind-blasted tundra are burning through precious energy reserves with every labored step through the snow. Metabolism slows to a crawl, conserving every calorie with ruthless efficiency. Bodies survive on the fat painstakingly accumulated during summer. With each passing day, those vital reserves grow dangerously thinner. But the greatest danger facing these caribou comes not from the cold or from starvation alone. It comes from the creatures that have been watching them patiently from across the snow-filled valley. The Arctic fox, the tundra's most ancient and enduring resident, wears the purest white winter coat that the natural world has ever produced. Not a streak, not a spot. Winter fur grows twice as thick as summer coat, enveloping the entire body from nose to tail like soft armor. The Arctic fox's biological clock is tuned to photoperiod, the duration of daylight each day. As light diminishes, the coat begins its seasonal transformation. Their hunting strategy depends entirely on hearing. Beneath thick snow, lemmings move through tunnels, and the Arctic fox hears every footstep. They tilt their head, calculate the position, then plunge straight down, both forepaws piercing the snow like arrows. The precision defies belief. Arctic foxes also practice caching, burying food beneath the snow to eat gradually through winter, like a network of pantries scattered across their territory. But the white fox's ancient dominance over the tundra is under mounting threat. From the warming south, a larger and more adaptable invader advances a little further with every passing season. Red fox's newcomers to Yukon since the early 20th century have by 2025 spread throughout the region, from taiga valleys to the tundra's edge. 20 to 30% larger than the Arctic fox, red foxes carry a size advantage in every direct encounter. Unlike Arctic foxes, red foxes rely on sight and speed rather than hearing. They do not need to detect prey beneath the snow, they spot it and give chase. Shorter winters, thinner snow cover driven by a warming climate, all of it creates ideal conditions for a southern species to thrive on land that was never theirs. Most alarming of all, red foxes are seizing the dens and rock caves that Arctic foxes have used for generations, directly threatening the breeding sites and nursery shelters of the native species. Red foxes eat nearly anything: lemmings, voles, birds, caribou carcasses, even refuse from remote settlements. That versatility is a weapon the Arctic fox does not possess. And unlike the Arctic fox, the red fox rarely caches food for future use. It lives entirely for the present moment, eat now, claim now, and never wait for tomorrow. This silent invasion is not merely a story between two fox species. It is a warning signal that the Arctic ecosystem is broadcasting to the entire world. But on the frozen tundra, a third hunter operates quieter than either, and more lethal than both. The snowy owl flies in absolute silence. Specialized feathers with velvet soft edges absorb every trace of sound, turning each dive into a death that arrives without warning. Lemmings account for more than 70% of the snowy owl's diet during breeding season, the very same food source upon which the Arctic fox depends for survival. Unlike most owls, the snowy owl hunts during both day and night, the supreme advantage in a land where light and darkness alternate on the Arctic's own terms. They fly low, skimming the ground from cliff perches or snow mounds, then strike at high-speed talons, sharp as blades piercing prey before it can react. And here lies the unexpected and devastating twist in this three-way competitive triangle. Adult snowy owls regularly steal food directly from Arctic foxes. One more layer of pressure bearing down on a white fox, already pushed southward by the red fox. Caught between two rivals, the Arctic fox faces a battle for survival on its own homeland. Data from Project Snowstorm in 2024 reveals that snowy owl numbers in northwestern Canada are rising. Welcome news for the owl, but another burden for the Arctic fox. Lemming population stability determines everything. When lemmings are abundant, all three hunters coexist. When lemmings crash, a three-way war erupts without mercy. Three winter hunters. Which one owns the smartest strategy? Arctic fox, red fox, or snowy owl? Let WildVerse know in the comments below. The winter tundra appears utterly silent, a blank canvas of ice and snow stretching to the horizon. But beneath that white surface, a life and death struggle never rests for a single moment. And while three small hunters compete for lemmings on the tundra, a true sovereign is moving through the snowy forest below. The grey wolf, the undisputed alpha predator of the Yukon's taiga ecosystem, has no need to compete for lemmings or voles. Its targets are far larger, far more dangerous, and far more rewarding. Between 4,500 and 5,000 grey wolves range across Yukon, according to Yukon environment data. This ranks among the largest wolf populations remaining in North America. Each pack numbers 5 to 12 members, moving like a military unit through snow-filled valleys and forested mountains, tracking caribou for dozens of miles without tiring. The alpha pair leads, deciding direction, timing the attack, dividing the kill. Behind them, young wolves learn by watching. Every hunt is a lesson. Communication within the pack unfolds through haunting howls echoing across snow-filled valleys, through subtle body posture, through fleeting eye contact. A single glance from the alpha can redirect the entire pack in absolute silence. Winter terrain is the wolf's ally. Narrow valleys, dense forest, steep mountain flanks, all of it enables flawless ambush tactics. Wolves do not waste energy chasing prey across open, featureless plains. They deliberately funnel quarry into terrain that restricts both visibility and escape routes. But the grey wolf is no indiscriminate killer. Wolves are highly selective hunters, targeting the old, the injured, the frail, the sick, or the very young. Observe first. Assess, then decide whether to attack or let go. Most pursuits end when the wolves themselves withdraw the quarry too strong, the energy cost too great. This selective strategy does more than improve success rates. It maintains the genetic health of the caribou herd, culling the weakest individuals across thousands of generations. A paradox of the wild so profound it borders on philosophy. The predator safeguards the strength of its prey. Without wolves, caribou herds would slowly deteriorate from within, weakened by the very individuals that survive unchallenged. When wolves do strike, their coordination is fearsome. One group drives head-on, forcing caribou toward an ambush team already waiting in the forest or behind a mountain ridge. Wolves encircle, isolate the weakest from the herd, and drive it into forest or mountainside where caribou lose their speed advantage. Once the quarry is cut off, the outcome is all but sealed. Caribou respond with the only defense their evolution has given them. Constant, tireless movement. To stand still is to die. To run is to live, even though every stride burns energy that cannot be replaced. The herd maintains tight formation through danger zones. The strongest males flank the outside. Females and calves shelter in the center a defensive line forged by instinct. But in deep snow, caribou hold an advantage of their own. Broad hooves distribute weight, allowing them to sprint across snow where wolves sink deeper with every step. Winter transforms every chase into a grinding war of attrition, played out across miles of frozen terrain. Wolves possess superior endurance. Caribou possess explosive speed. Whichever exhausts its reserves first loses. On certain nights, wolf howls carry through the Richardson Valley like the oldest song the world has ever known. The caribou hear it and begin to move even through total darkness. Pressure from wolves ensures caribou never remain in one place too long. That perpetual unease, ironically, drives them to discover new lichen patches they would otherwise never have found. Caribou metabolism declines as winter deepens. Bodies shift into conservation mode, surviving on fat reserves stored during summer. No food, no liquid water. Snow becomes the sole source of hydration. Each day is a struggle between conserving energy and fleeing predators. The weakest caribou fall first, their strength finally spent. Their carcasses feed wolves, feed ravens, feed the red foxes, steadily expanding their territory, a food chain that operates with brutal efficiency even in the most extreme cold. But the survivors, the strongest, the most cunning, the luckiest, continue walking through deep snow every single day. Within the bellies of the surviving females, new life is quietly forming. Caribou fetuses develop throughout the long winter darkness, nourished by the very fat reserves that are slowly and steadily draining from their mothers' bodies. They await what ancient instinct has always foretold, what 10,000 generations have confirmed. The light will return, the snow will melt, spring will come. And when the deep snowpack begins to soften, when the first warm winds sweep through the Richardson Range, the surviving caribou quietly turn northward. The wolf pack halts at the tree line, as though an invisible border runs along the forest's edge. They do not follow caribou onto the coastal plain that is not wolf territory. The winter hunt is over. The caribou begin a new chapter in the most tenacious overland odyssey in North America. Ahead lies the Beaufort coastal plain, where the next generation will be born. But spring in Yukon carries no promise of peace. It is when the two largest terrestrial predators awaken from dormancy and caribou are about to give birth, surrounded by fangs, claws, and insatiable hunger. April arrives at last. Temperatures edge upward from 20 below to the mid-30s Fahrenheit. The ice on the Yukon River begins to fracture, releasing sharp, cracking sounds that echo through the valleys like the snapping of ancient bones. Clear water flows for the first time in 6 months. Snow on the Richardson slopes melts into thousands of small streams, pouring down onto the Beaufort coastal plain. Spring in Yukon does not arrive gradually. It erupts within weeks. Temperatures can surge to the 50s and 60s Fahrenheit, transforming white tundra into a fragile carpet of new green. Sedge, lichen, and willow sprout after months dormant beneath the snow. This is the most nutrient-rich food source of the entire year, and the pregnant caribou need it more than ever. From the Richardson Range, the porcupine caribou begin their reverse migration across the north slope, heading for the Beaufort coastal plain. Females lead the way. Heavy with unborn calves, they press forward without pause across the thawing, treacherous tundra and ancient instinct compelling them to reach the right place at precisely the right time. The Beaufort Plain did not become the calving ground by chance. Predator density along the coast runs 30 to 40% lower than inland calf survival rates increase significantly. Peak calving falls within the first week of June, between the 1st and the 7th. More than 75% of caribou cows give birth during that narrow window. Seven days that determine the future of the entire herd. Synchronized calving is an evolutionary strategy. So many newborns arriving at once overwhelms predators' capacity to kill them all. Newborn caribou are desperately vulnerable in their first week. Legs trembling, eyes unaccustomed to light, entirely dependent on their mother's milk. But within hours of birth, they must stand and run. There is no second option on a plain where grizzly bears are on patrol. Bull caribou use antlers and hooves to defend the calving grounds. They stand sentinel at the herd's edge, scanning the flat tundra vigilant against every approaching shape. Afterbirth and placenta from the calving season deliver nitrogen and microorganisms into the soil, stimulating stronger sedge and willow growth, igniting the spring nutrient cycle for the entire ecosystem. But the scent of blood and fresh afterbirth is also a powerful invitation carried far on the Arctic wind, and Yukon's two largest predators have already caught the scent. The grizzly bear, after months of hibernation, re-emerges onto the freshly thawed floodplain. Starving and gaunt, it needs protein immediately. A mother grizzly leads one or two small cubs, moving slowly across the tundra. But do not mistake that deliberate pace for weakness. When the scent of a newborn caribou reaches a grizzly, the bear shifts instantly into predatory mode. Approaching carefully upwind, it works to separate a calf from its mother, with terrifying methodical patience. The explosive power and speed of a grizzly bear overwhelms a newborn caribou entirely, especially those not yet steady on their feet, mere hours after birth. Pressure from grizzlies forces caribou to shift their calving grounds continuously from year to year. They never calve in the same location 2 seasons, running a survival lesson encoded in instinct. Every calf taken by a grizzly is a direct loss for the next generation. Calf survival rates during the first 2 weeks determine the herd's strength for years to come. But the grizzly bear is not the only apex predator stirring from dormancy as the days lengthen and the ice retreats. From the shores of Herschel Island, where sea ice is fracturing into vast slabs, an enormous creature begins moving inland. The polar bear, weighing between 770 and 1,100 pounds, standing roughly 5 feet at the shoulder, is the largest bear living within Yukon's borders. Having evolved from brown bears during the Pleistocene, the polar bear carries coarse white fur, massive paddle-like paws, and curved razor-sharp claws, the perfect arsenal for an icy world. In spring, polar bears hunt seals at fractures in the sea ice, patiently staking out breathing holes where seals surface for air. But as the ice continues to melt, polar bears are forced ashore. On land, they shift to hunting caribou calves, scavenging carcasses, or consuming whatever they can find. Climate change is rewriting the polar bear's schedule. They come ashore earlier, remain on land longer, in a habitat that was never naturally theirs. And on land, polar bears must contend with grizzlies, smaller bears, but more aggressive and far more familiar with the terrain. Grizzlies can drive polar bears off a kill through sheer aggression and home field advantage. The ice giant becomes the underdog on dry ground. Two bear species, the grizzly with brute dominance on land, the polar bear with imposing mass arriving from the sea, operating across overlapping terrain on the same coastal plain. Both target caribou calves. Both are ravenous after the long winter, and the Beaufort Plain becomes a battleground where caribou mothers must defend their young at any cost. Caribou mothers do not retreat. They charge with antlers, strike with hooves, shield with their own bodies, regardless of the predator's overwhelming size. Not every encounter ends in the bear's favor. Some caribou mothers drive off even grizzlies, forcing the predator to seek easier targets. That courage is not a choice made in the moment, it is instinct, forged across millennia. Every calf that survives is a victory for the herd, for the bloodline, for the species. As spring turns to summer, the surviving calves grow stronger, legs steadier, eyes sharper, and the instinct to run already woven into every muscle fiber. Grizzly bear or polar bear, which is more fearsome on the Beaufort Plain? Let WildVerse know in the comments below. Spring ends with a paradox that defines the Yukon ecosystem. The season of renewal is also the season of greatest killing. But that is how this wilderness operates, life and death, intertwined in every breath. And as daylight stretches to 18 hours, as temperatures reach the 60s Fahrenheit, Yukon enters its shortest yet most radiant season, summer. On the highest peaks, where temperatures plummet too low and winds blow too fiercely for any tree to take root, another world awaits entirely. Alpine tundra from 3,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level is the domain of creatures that choose to remain in the harshest place of all. From June through August, daylight extends 18 to 22 hours each day. Temperatures range from the low 40s to the upper 70s Fahrenheit, the only warm season of the year. Wildflowers, lichen and short grasses bloom within a fleeting window of 45 to 90 days. Every day counts, no creature dares waste one. Dall sheep, the Alpine's resident experts, stand on sheer cliff faces as though gravity does not exist. Standing 3 feet at the shoulder, rams weigh 155 to 245 pounds with massive curling horns. Ewes are lighter, 100 to 150 pounds, but no less adapted to the vertical world. Ewes choose the highest, steepest cliffs to give birth, where no predator dares climb. Absolute safety but at the price of total isolation. The NDVI index, a satellite-measured vegetation greenness metric, directly determines Dall lamb survival rates. In years when alpine vegetation is poor, lamb mortality spikes. Dall sheep feed on sedge, willow, and moss, regulating the alpine plant community in their own way, maintaining balance in the high-elevation ecosystem. As the climate warms, shrub species are creeping upward, encroaching on alpine tundra. The traditional food sources of Dall sheep may shift within coming decades. Dall sheep respond by adjusting their elevation, with the seasons climbing higher in summer, descending lower in winter. That adaptability has sustained them for thousands of years. But in the vast alpine sky above, a pair of extraordinarily keen eyes watches every movement on the slopes below. The golden eagle king of the Yukon summer sky nests on sheer cliff faces where strong winds and panoramic sightlines span dozens of miles. Nests are reused year after year, positioned discreetly, beyond the reach of every ground predator. Each nest is an aerial fortress. By late April, golden eagles lay 1 to 2 eggs, 45 days of incubation, then 65 to 80 days of rearing the entire summer devoted to the next generation. Between the 7th and 9th weeks, parents teach their young to fly. Encouraging wing beats, short hops from the nest's edge, then the first glides along precipitous cliff walls. Parents drop live prey into the nest to train attack reflexes. The mother swoops past her fledgling, feigning strikes, activating the combat instinct every eagle must possess to survive. The golden eagle's signature hunting technique is the contour flight, skimming 3 to 15 feet above the terrain, then diving on prey before it even registers the threat. Against Dall lambs, the eagle approaches from below, gripping the back or neck, using weight and talons to exhaust the young sheep before delivering the final blow. Against adult mountain goats on cliff faces, golden eagles employ a push-off tactic, diving in to shove prey off the ledge. Once it falls, gravity finishes the job. Powerful talons, devastating dive speed, and tactical intelligence, the golden eagle poses an unceasing threat from above to every alpine creature. But not every high-altitude resident lives in fear. The hoary marmot, the largest rodent of the alpine zone, has its own solution. Hibernating 8 months of every year, hoary marmots are active for roughly 90 days each summer. That is all the time they have to eat, mate, raise young, and store reserves. Silver-gray fur, stocky build, they devour grasses, wildflowers, and roots without pause. Every day is a race to accumulate fat for the 8 months of sleep ahead. The hoary marmot's distinctive warning whistle rings across mountainsides whenever an eagle appears, a natural alarm system that protects the entire colony. Summer is the most social season for hoary marmots. They play, mate, and defend territory, living 90 days as though it were an entire lifetime. On the sweeping plains below, caribou capitalize on every hour of summer. They climb to windswept ridges to escape clouds of mosquitoes and horseflies, packing on 10 to 15% of their body weight each month. Caribou calves survivors from the spring learn by following the herd, choosing food, and reading predator signals. The fat they store during summer will determine whether they live or die the following winter. But summer in Yukon also serves as a sobering reminder that this ancient land is changing. Permafrost is thawing at accelerating rates. Ground is subsiding. Methane and mercury leaching into the ecosystem from soil locked for millennia. Herschel Island is being forced to relocate cultural heritage before the coastline erodes away. Destabilized hydrology threatens both Chinook, salmon, and indigenous communities living along the Yukon River. Shrubs invade the tundra. Wildfire frequency rises. Red foxes push their territory northward, all living proof that climate change is redrawing Yukon's ecological map. Porcupine, caribou, and Chinook, salmon, two iconic migrants, face habitat loss and food instability greater than at any point in recorded history. But Yukon has not surrendered. The Our Clean Future strategy targets a 45% reduction in emissions from 2010 levels, aiming for 97% renewable electricity before 2030. The YRITWC Council monitors water quality across the Yukon River. The 7-year Chinook fishing moratorium, sacrificing the present to save the future, targets 71,000 fish passing the border. Indigenous knowledge held by the Gwich'in and Vuntut Gwich'in, accumulated across thousands of years, is now merging with modern science in a conservation effort unlike any before. And so the great seasonal circle closes once more, as it has for millennia. As the first leaves turn to burnished gold across the taiga, as temperatures begin their long descent, the porcupine caribou turn southward once again. 143,000 pairs of hooves begin the 1,500-mile trek once more through tundra, through forest, and over mountain passes worn smooth by the passage of countless generations. Every species, every season, every strategy carries a price that must be paid in full. Stay or go. Nature never answers that question. It simply watches and records who survives. But the cycle has never stopped turning, and it never will, so long as Yukon remains wild, untamed, and free. Thank you for joining WildVerse. The natural world still holds countless stories waiting to be told. We will see you on the next journey. For those who have not yet subscribed, now is the perfect time. Hit subscribe and the notification bell to never miss a story from WildVerse.